Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Dom. With me is Kitty. You are watching the ProLib show. Good evening, Kitty. How are you?
Tired.
Yeah, me too. It's been a week.
2 weeks.
It's been 2 weeks since we were on the air. I'm just saying, for me personally, it's been
Fair.
a busy week. Yes. So first, besides that though, how are you? We were talking about your new tattoos.
Yes,
Just
I'm
before we went
getting
on air.
sakura blossoms and branches on my collarbones because, like, they're very prominent, so they need some decoration, and it'll be great with my little caterfly.
Hi, Michelle. Hi, Pragmatic. Good to see you guys. How what's the cost for that?
It's only gonna be a couple $100.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
it's like a Mother's Day thing for me, you know?
Right.
Um,
My
I'm
brother
excited.
does tattoos. My brother is a tattoo artist. My stepbrother, but brother is a tattoo artist, and so I'm always curious. Like when he does tattoos, I'm always like, how much does
Well,
that?
I mean, this one here, the Memento Mori one that I
Mhm.
have, I actually got for free. It
Wow.
was a trade. Well, the tattoo artist that did my caterfly and then these here on my arm, he was moving to a cold place up, Pacific Northwest, and
Mhm.
he only has a motorcycle. And he was like, can you like make me like a balaclava or something for under my motorcycle helmet to help me stay warm? And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, absolutely. So I got this skull and the memento mori right here. I got that for free as like a trade of services. It's
Oh, like
I
you bartered
crochet.
each
Yeah,
other.
exactly. Going back to my socialist like commune, like
Right.
I bartered for that.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was
My
great.
brother. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. Anyway,
Hmm.
there was a band, a very prominent a band you would know, and the last time they did a concert there, he did all of their tattoos. But I don't know if I'm allowed to say, but it was like really
Regardless,
cool. It was like
bartering skill for skill, wonderful thing.
right, and it was a very similar kind of situation. Anyway, I don't know that I'm supposed to be talking about it, so I'm not gonna say. Um, anyway, tonight on the show, we're gonna be talking about we're kind of building off some things that we've been talking about. So we started with Curtis Yarvin. Go back and watch that stream. Curtis Yarvin, uh, basically everything that's
Misintentions
going
of the
on right now,
Antichrist.
destroying the democratic system in the United States, were all ideas from Curtis Yarvin. Curtis Yarvin inspired Peter Thiel, inspired um, Vivek Ramaswamy, Peter Andreessen, all of these guys that are pulling apart the underpinnings of our democracy. All Curtis Yarvin's ideas. So go back. If you're new here, you should start there. We talked about some other stuff. We've talked about Christian nationalism. Last episode, not last week, we had Mowdy on,
Christopher Mowdy.
Christopher Mowdy on to talk about eugenics, the how eugenics was funded in the United States. It didn't stop after the Nazis. It just moved venues, moved to the United States, the Pioneer Fund, all of that. This week we're talking about kind of those two things plugged in together. RFK Jr., the Secretary of Health and Human Services, has announced that he will have an autism registry. He will put people with autism on a registry. To do that, he is amassing the medical records of millions of Americans. So you don't necessarily have to have anything in your background to be on his registry. And the idea is that he's going to study autism, or maybe not him, but the NIH. I'm just reading here from the story. The new data will allow external researchers picked for Kennedy's autism studies to study comprehensive patient data with broad coverage of the US population for the first time. NIH director Dr. J. I'm going to butcher this last
Butcher
name.
that.
Bhattacharya. BHATTACHARYA. J. Bhattacharya.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that right. The idea of the platform is that existing data resources are often fragmented and difficult to obtain. The NIH itself, this is a direct quote, the NIH itself will often pay multiple times for the same data resource. Even data resources that are within the federal government are difficult to obtain, he said in a presentation to the agency's advisors. The reason I want to bring this up is that I've seen some people online being like, oh, well, this is a proposal. This is no. They're doing that. This is announced. This is happening right now as we speak. Possibly your medical data is being put into this database for autism studies.
and the thing is you don't even necessarily have to have an autism diagnosis. There could be other like criteria that they're like, oh, that's close enough. So there could be people catching strays. But the fact of the matter is a lot of autistic children end up with, Medicaid or the like, and they're pulling from that database, like the Medicare, Medicaid,
Yep.
anything they can possibly find. They are compiling all of this, and this is exactly what the Nazis did before they started getting rid of the undesirables, the people that they thought were thinning out the gene pool, essentially going back to the eugenics argument, the ones that were a drain on society, in their words. So the disabled people and the people with like that are differently abled or mental disabilities or mental issues, like they were the first ones, along with the queers that were targeted.
And
And
it's funny that you bring up the word undesirables, because our friend Curtis Yarvin, who I just mentioned, guess what he said, literally using the word undesirables? He said that undesirables should be turned into biodiesel.
yeah,
So like, it's not just me like spouting nonsense, like, guys, this is connected,
it's all
like,
connected. It is literally
literally
all
it's the
connected.
same. Yes. Yes. Andreas brings up a good point. They're gonna feed it to AI or A1, like some education secretary like to call it. Andreas, yes. So we don't have a lot of clarification, but the apparent idea is that they're going to put it into some kind of algorithm, and the algorithm will make decisions as to how things proceed as they look for a solution, if that makes sense. Um, you know,
Maybe an ending one, or something with a bit of finality to it, maybe.
well, and David brings up a good point. These are two batshit conspiracy theory quacks. They are 100%.
But they have power.
But they have power, and that's the issue, is that they currently have power. Now we're gonna try to end with a happy ending tonight. So don't get too. We're starting with the bad, and we're gonna lead into the good. But the problem is that these people are in control of the levers of power in the United States. Thankfully, a lot of them are incompetent buffoons, which is probably going to hold them back more than they realize. But they're still trying. Another thing I saw real quick, I know Kitty wants to talk, but real quick, another thing I saw is that some of the apps, that women are using to track their periods are now requiring you to put in what state you are in. Please don't do that. If you're using them to track your menstrual cycles, just delete the app and use a
Don't
calendar or something.
don't use those. Like, honestly, truly, don't use an app for that. Go back to the calendar method, just get yourself a little like daily planner, like monthly planner. Do
Sure.
it that way. Or you know what? Hey, go and there's a gotcha game called Love in Deep Space. It's a romance like dating sim game, and they added a period tracker into that, but it's not something that the government would actually think to look at, because they would just be like, oh, a Tome game, like that's not anything.
Titan, what thing with the egg beater? I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm afraid. I don't That's terrifying.
I don't know. I don't know what you mean. Callan, hi, it's good to see you. From what I can tell, we're all on the list.
Yeah.
Being autistic doesn't put you on the list. Everyone just goes on the list. And then,
they need to weed out the autistics.
Sure. There's another place that I think I want to get into in a second, but I want to stay on the autism thing and then what I think is going to happen next. The happy ending thing. Oh, I thought you were referring. Gotcha. Okay. All right. I thought you were referring to
the period tracking thing.
Period tracking with an egg beater.
Does that work with an egg beater?
I was like, with an egg timer, maybe, but even that's like an hour. Okay. All right. So, here's the other reason why I think, not why I think. Here's another reason why I know they're putting more onto the autism registry than just autistic people. Kitty, I have no way to ask this without being offensive. Is transgenderism a mental disease?
Well, I personally would say no, but there are plenty of people that would say that yes, being trans or being queer
Correct.
are mental disorders. In
Which
fact,
is
for
why
a
I
long
called it
time, it was considered if you were homosexual or if you were, trans, you were considered to have a mental disability, like a mental disorder.
And what other sexual orientation was at one time considered mental illness or a mental disorder?
Well, I mean, really anything but straight. Like,
so if you had the medical records of all Americans and you were already highlighting all the autistic people, wouldn't it be really easy to also say, well, we should also track other mental illnesses? That's where I think this is going, because that would give them whatever, if they can center on autistic people and get that through where they're institutionalized, whatever it is that they're going to, separating, identifying whatever it is, they're going to try to use that to also target trans, gay, and queer people.
Gay, yeah, and queer, exactly.
Right. Just like the Nazis did. The Nazis did it was the exact same.
Like this is, it's literally a 1-for-1. It's just now they have technology to do it, by computer and like machine learning instead of like having to go like actually pick out medical records from different doctors' offices.
Right.
But the thing is while these people are insane, but they also, are incompetent, as you said. But again, there's also the fact that they are pushing too far too fast, and you're already starting to see a backlash effect. You're already starting to see even people that voted for these people saying, no, 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 we don't want this. This is a bridge too far. And there is like a whole subset of people who have autistic children, and it is considered, a derogatory thing, but there's the autism mom or autism dad, where
Right.
essentially they make having an autistic child their whole personality, where
Right.
you can't go a single conversation without hearing it. Those people are not going to take kindly, if someone even like looks at their autistic child wrong, they are ready to go full Karen. And we are in a country with more than people. It is not going to end well, because the fastest way to radicalize somebody is to go after their children. And while they've used the fear tactic of, oh, the gays and the trans, they're going for the kids, it's not actually real. But this is
Right.
something tangible that there's actually going to be verifiable evidence, especially if they start actually, taking resources away from, the autistics, saying, oh, well, we're not going to do that, or try to institutionalize them if they don't necessarily need it, because they want to weed out the undesirables.
Right.
It is not going to end well, because if you go for a person's children, like that's where you get mama bears, that's where you get papa bears, where that is the fastest way to get people to actually do horrible things that they might never otherwise have done. And that's true too. What Kitty says, that it is hereditary. Autism and ADHD are very closely linked, where usually, you'll have one or the other, and you'll have like a parent might have ADHD and then the child has autism, or vice versa. And
Sure.
sometimes you'll get like ADHD, where it's autism and ADHD.
Right.
Um,
Just like
my
anxiety
parents,
disorder, depression, like that can be hereditary too.
yeah, absolutely. And there are tons of people that are like my age that they are either ADHD or autistic, but they have never gotten a proper diagnosis because especially if they were assigned female at birth. For
Right.
ADHD and autism, if you were assigned female at birth and you're my age, it is very unlikely for you to have a diagnosis. Because one, they considered it to be a more boys' condition that, women or people assigned female at birth, people socialized as women, they're meant to be quiet and more reserved, and that's how they're socialized, to just kind of not be rowdy, where it's the boys will be boys attitude. So a boy can be rambunctious and then he's allowed to run wild. It's like, oh yeah, he probably has autism or he probably has ADHD because of these things that he's doing that fit that criteria.
Right.
And while the socialized female person might also fit the criteria, they are just socialized to kind of repress it and try to be quiet and make themselves small.
Yeah, and I think what Titan brings up is a good point. Neuroatypically is complex. No, I said that wrong. Neuroatypicality, there we go, is complex, and only certain specific types are caused by specific mutations on specific genes, of course. And I believe there's also been studies that are saying the same thing about queerness, about sexual orientation. In general, whether it's asexual or gay or lesbian, trans, whatever. So or not trans, but queerness. So this whole idea that gender has to be that gender is hereditary is completely bonkers. Gender is absolutely environmental. It's taught. There's no gender is as fluid as you want to make it, or as like you don't even have to have gender. You can be completely non-binary, like Bella Ramsey, or I have a colleague I work with very closely who I really, really admire, and they're non-gendered, but they're really, really good with
Yeah,
finance and retirement.
agendered falls under the non-binary umbrella, which is
Right.
under the overall trans umbrella.
Right, absolutely. And so gender is an environmental construct. It's social construct. It doesn't. It's just whatever you think of it. But the whole what these people are pushing is that gender is genetic or hereditary, however you want to say it. Obviously, there are sexual, genetic sexual components to it, with reproductive organs, but gender itself is just a social construct. How are women, there were many Native American tribes. This is what I'm trying to get to. There were many Native American tribes that were matriarchal in construction, right? The women were in charge. The women were the ones that owned land, and they were the ones that sold men, and it's different from the patriarchal society. So if gender was this hereditary construct where women are naturally submissive and men are naturally dominant, then how did those matriarchal societies, how did they ever exist? If gender
Honestly, even in Western society, if you go back and here's my plug for FDR for this episode, you can
Sure.
see a picture of FDR in a dress with long hair.
Right.
Back when pink was considered a masculine color because
Right.
it is muted red, and blue
Right.
was considered a feminine color. It was before that pink blue switch. And back at that point, before like kindergarten, like boys wore dresses.
Well,
Like there are pictures of him in a dress.
there's that meme of the Scottish guy wearing a kilt, and he says it's not a dress because you wear underwear under those. That's the whole thing. Like a codpiece and a kilt. That was what Scottish warriors wore into battle. Like it wasn't like it was some frou-frou thing. Like that was your armor. Titan, that's a good point too. It also occurs in people whose mothers don't have those genes. So it's correlative of increased probability, but not causative. Correct. That's what I'm saying. But what I'm talking about is specifically the norms that we have for gender. If I grew my hair long, which I did have long hair at one point, Kitty's seen an old video of me with long hair from a
It
million
was
years ago,
adorable.
back when I rode dinosaurs to school.
Baby
Um,
dumb.
was I more feminine? Did naturally growing my hair create an air of femininity around me? No, I don't think so. But that would be the natural extension of the argument that gender is genetic, right?
Yeah, look at the covers of bodice rippers where you've got like Fabio, like long hair and like big
Right.
bulky muscles,
With his
or
nips
like
out and everything.
right, like it's wild. It's absolutely fucking wild that this is the hill they want to die on.
Sinister Franklin is sitting on my foot. He's literally his butt is on my right foot right now. So that is where Franklin is. Homosexuality is more prevalent among the children of women who have a specific gene causes a minor hormonal sequence inversion during pregnancy if the mother is stressed. I did not know that. I was not. I knew that there have been studies that have shown genetic components, but I didn't know. I did not know that granularity. So thank you for sharing that. Yes, and the idea here is that if they can somehow work the levers of power around autistic people to institutionalize autistic people, to forcibly medicate, whatever it is, if they're successful at that, then they're going to move on to other mental illnesses. And they're going to, whatever mental illness, just like the Nazis did, anything they can classify as mental illness, they'll classify it. And I
If
don't
you have
just,
depression, bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, anxiety disorders, like if
but
you
even,
have PTSD, any of those things could all qualify.
but not only that, also, I think it was, someone will have to, if it was Lenin or Stalin, one of them, the undesirables were just people that were at some point it was just people who were unemployed, just people who
Like,
didn't
oh, you
work.
get laid off from your job because of automation? Sucks to be you. Now you go to the camps.
Maybe, yeah, well, but maybe the reason that you got laid off from work was you had some sort of mental disease. Now you're in the mental disease queue. Yeah, maybe you may have actually gotten laid off due to AI, but maybe your job gets some sort of bonus if they identify you as having a mental illness, and now you're in the mental illness queue. That's the kind of thing that sounds really scary, that we're literally like 2 steps away from. Like,
And they're not big steps.
they're not big steps. Because what we've allowed to happen in our society, and if you saw what's her face, the Democratic senator today with the terrible take on woke. We can't be woke. What was Alyssa Slotkin? What we've allowed is this conversation to develop around wokeness and trans people, and we've allowed them to tie it together, and treat both as though there's some sort of mental disease. There is something wrong with you if you are woke and or trans, right? That's the national conversation. Obviously, I don't believe that in any way, shape, or form, but that's the conversation that we've allowed to fester. Now, what you have is these people saying, "Oh, well, there's a woke mind virus." You have a mind virus if you're woke. If you want empathy and equality for other people, you have a mental disease. And at the same time, you have RFK Jr. putting together a autism registry, and you have Curtis Yarvin saying undesirables should be changed into biodiesel. You've got all three of these things happening simultaneously. You've got Elon talking about a woke mind virus. You've got RFK
Biodiesel.
need to be changed into biodiesel. So yeah, you should
This
probably be
might
a little bit
be
freaked out about that.
this might be the thing, I've been saying, like, I have been hopeful that, we can tough it out and we can make it to the midterms and that this isn't actually the fall of the empire. That hope is dwindling by the day because when they pull stuff like this, like the tariffs, that's a whole other thing where it's going to hurt people, 130% tariff on China when we get most of our goods from there. Tariffs on things that we can't even produce, like coffee in the United States. We can't grow coffee here.
No,
So,
or bananas.
yeah. So, I mean, it's absolutely wild and it's going to hurt people and that's going to cause a lot of civil unrest.
Yeah.
But the fact that they are now targeting, and there are a lot more autistic children now than there were back in RFK's time. It has nothing to do with vaccines, which RFK seems to believe it does. And that goes back to Andrew Wakefield, who is a discredited and had his medical license revoked doctor. And I use doctor in air quotes because he was a quack and a disgrace. He was paid by a pharmaceutical company to come up with a competitor to the MMR vaccine. He did a study and he cherry picked like only 7 people, which is not
Right.
enough to draw a conclusion in
No.
any reputable study. 7 people. And even that, he also fudged the data. This is why he lost his medical license. And it was all because he had a fiduciary incentive because he was being paid to come up with a competitor to the MMR vaccine. That's why he did the whole thimerosal and mercury and autism connection. It was never true. It was never real. And they
And
have proved over and over again that there is no connection. And they don't even put thimerosal in the vaccines anymore.
and not only that, his link was that it did something to your gut bacteria and it altered your gut bacteria, and that's what caused autism. Like, it was wacky beyond belief. I was like, well, why are you putting? And by the way, the original argument, I want to reiterate what Kitty just said. The original argument was not that vaccines were dangerous. It was that the combination of MMR caused alterations in your gut bacteria
Biome.
that could cause autism, because he wanted to sell a single dose measles vaccine. The original argument wasn't that vaccines were bad. The original argument was that this vaccine is better. That was Andrew Wakefield's original
But it got blown so
proposal.
out of proportion with like the Jenny McCarthy's of the world, like
Jesus.
making it like I despise that woman. Because here's the thing, even though they have proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that vaccines and autism, there's no link between them whatsoever, saying that you don't want to vaccinate your child because you're worried about them getting autism is like saying you would rather risk a dead child to having
Right.
an autistic child. It is like
Right.
dehumanizing to like insane degrees, and it absolutely infuriates me. But the fact of the matter, like they are targeting the kids, and that is going to have a huge backlash because I don't know a
Yes.
single parent out there. I mean, I know there are some, like there's always exceptions to the rule, but if you come for my child, I will to my last breath defend my child. And
Yeah.
the parents that I know are the exact same way. They would absolutely lay down their lives to protect their children. So if they start trying to take the children to become biodiesel because they're undesirable because they're autistic, that's not going to end well. That is literally going to be a revolution.
And Porpoise brings up a good point too. I love people who think I'd rather be a long dead corpse than an autistic adult. Like, the autistic people themselves are not just going to be like, well, I guess I got to get on the bus now. I don't know. Like, I really early on, I think it was even before Trump. No, it was just after Trump was inaugurated. I wrote an article on Unburdened called "This Fire Hose of Fascism is Too Much Too Soon," and I still stand by that. What the issue that they're running into right now? I don't know if you've seen this. You have, because we talked about this earlier. Trump's approval ratings are tanking, even among Republicans. He's upside down on Republicans on inflation, on trade, on domestic policy, and on foreign policy. All 4 of the major, the major things that are tracked, he's upside down. Not just with the or not with
Democrats and
his
independents.
right. With Democrats and independents. So he is he's hitting this wall. This entire regime is hitting this wall. And simultaneously, you've got Pete Hegseth completely fucking up. You've got Kash Patel, who's already been removed from one of his appointments because he just didn't show up to work. You've got MAGA rabid because they don't think that Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and Dan Bongino, or however the fuck you say his name, aren't doing enough to arrest Democrats. That's what MAGA wants. MAGA doesn't really care too much about the immigrants. Like they'll say that they care, but they don't really care about that. They want mass arrests of Democrats, and they are upset that it's not happening. And the problem with mass arrests, they are kind of getting around things right now because they've been targeting immigrants with either who are without documents or where the documents are a little dodgy. Like something's going on with their, like they arrested the one guy when he was going to a citizenship hearing and they just intercepted him before he could go in the door. And ICE just grabbed him. It was like, well, he was going inside to get his citizenship. The video I posted on Blue Sky today of the guy yesterday in Charlottesville, he had been charged with a crime, but the crime was dismissed. He stepped out of the courtroom and ICE grabbed him as he stepped out of the courtroom after his charge was dismissed. And they're going to claim, well, they haven't done this yet, but obviously what the claim is, well, being charged with that crime means that his documentation is invalid. That's going to be the argument they're going to make. But doing the same to just normal American citizens is it is going to hit very differently. Especially there are a lot of sleeping Democrats and sleeping independents who just didn't show up to the polls, and just didn't vote. They just didn't vote. We've talked about this a million times. They literally just didn't vote, guys. I don't know why they just didn't go.
Like less than a quarter of the country, overall voted for this.
Right. It's actually a very small minority of the country, of the voting electorate. And what you're doing is you're waking all of those people up, and they are going to go to the damn polls. I guarantee they're going to go to you're going to have, if uninterrupted, if the election is uninterrupted, you're going to have very large turnouts in 2026 and 2028. So they know this, and they think that the way to, this is all me postulating, of course, speculating. The way to head that off is to scare people. If we can scare enough people into just not stopping us, we can do whatever we want.
Keep your head down, and if you're not one of the undesirables, just keep your head down. But the fact is they're expanding the list of undesirables really, really quickly. It's not just undocumented people with criminal records. It is now that they're going after the autistic kids, now that they're going after people that have any mental health issues, which that includes PTSD for veterans.
Yep.
That's not going to go over very well.
Nope.
With the whole, support the troops thing.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of truth to the old poem of first they came for the communists and I said nothing because I wasn't a communist. And then they came for the trade unionists and I said nothing. But eventually, when they get down to you, there's nobody left. But, we've already been through that. And they're starting to see that people are getting disappeared. They're getting blackbagged without due process. And that is scaring people, but not in the way that they thought it would. It's not scaring them into not saying anything. It's scaring them into taking to the streets because they're like, no, you are going against the rule of law. These people are being blackbagged and sent to an extrajudicial prison outside of the country without any due process. The numbers on the conservative side, 75% of the people that have been sent to CCOT so far had zero criminal record, zero. And none of them had due process, but 75%, and that's the conservative number. Some other figures put it closer to 90% had zero. And the ones that did have criminal records, it was things like simple possession or nonviolent crimes. None of them had a violent crime.
They weren't rapists
conviction.
And murderers and that sort of thing. And Sinister Purpose brings up what I talked about in that article was that Americans really like freedom. All Americans like freedom. If you break down any argument, whether it's from MAGA or from Democrats, at its base, it's usually based on some sort of freedom. There's some sort of freedom of mind that's being impinged or redirected, whatever. I had a very frustrating conversation the other day, and I won't say with who, but I had a very frustrating conversation about a Matt Iglesias tweet. I know. Matt Iglesias And if you're in the Discord, you saw when I shared this, but I'm going to read this real quick. Matt Iglesias tweeted about national ID cards. He said, quote, "I am sort of open to the idea that we should be a country with a national ID card system and a rule that you're expected to have your papers on you at all times in case your citizenship is challenged. But if that's what conservatives want, we need to create the card." Now, what I sent back to him was, of course, the Fourth Amendment, which reads, "The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause." That is the beginning of the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment continues on, but that was the relevant part of the Fourth Amendment. I had a very frustrating conversation with somebody who was like, well, yeah, let's just, if that's what the conservatives want, so let's just have a national ID card system. And if your citizenship gets challenged, you just have to, you pull out your card. They do that in other countries. In other countries, this was the argument being made to me. In other countries, when you stay at a hotel room, you have to present your passport. And they have to keep your passport on file while you're at the hotel, and then they return your passport to you. I was like, okay, I get that in other countries. I'm not in another country. I'm in my fucking country.
America. This is America.
And
we've never had
Amendment, that. I know you guys get exhausted when I talk about history sometimes, but just real quick. The reason that the Fourth Amendment exists is that during the war, British troops could literally walk into your home and say, "We own all of this now. You need to get the fuck out.
Or we kill you."
Yeah, you need to, all of your stuff is ours. We're taking everything that you have. And and it could be literally any, like some private could have just walked into your home and just taken all your shit immediately like that. And this was, there's a reason that it's number 4, right? That's pretty high in list. You got free speech, you got
free assembly
free speech, free assembly. You got the right to bear arms. You've got, hey, this is how the government works. And the first one after that is, by the way, cops can't just grab all your shit. You cannot just grab
civil asset forfeiture is a thing that happens.
Well,
now.
we could do a week of streams on civil asset forfeiture.
Yes.
For 20 years, I've said that civil asset forfeiture was taking away Fourth Amendment rights from Americans, and that it was wrong, and that it was fascism. And I had centrists be like, "It's not fascism. They don't know if that was used in the admission of a crime." And I'm just like, you motherfuckers. Anyway,
this is how we get on that slope. This is how we get to.
That's how we get to RFK Jr. having an autism registry. The Fourth Amendment is clear. Except upon a warrant issued upon probable fucking cause. There has to be probable cause. Being
and it
brown,
can't just be that your skin is too dark.
Or having autism, or going to your
non-white
citizenship.
Name.
Right. None of that is probable cause. And the Supreme Court, by the way, agrees with me, and it's been ruled on many times. Yes, there's been some civil asset forfeiture bullshit. I agree. But at its core, they agree with me that there shouldn't. And like, I understand real ID. And people are like, well, with real ID, it's harder to fake the IDs because the little hologram in there's okay. Do we have some sort of fake ID problem in this country? Really? What do people use fake IDs for? To drink alcohol under 21.
And usually it's when they're like 16, which in other countries, depending on the alcohol, you can drink at 16 or 18. Right. It's okay. So like if and if they don't have the fake ID to get it, they're just going to pay somebody to get it for them. So grand scheme, it's not that serious. Like,
right. It's not like,
it's really not.
It's really not. All it does is give the police an opportunity and a reason to search you without probable cause, because then they can say, I'm not sure that you're a citizen. I would like to see your papers, please. So no, I do not agree with Matt Iglesias. And no, this is not a hill that we should sacrifice. My personal effects are mine, and no one can look into them, and no one can go through them unless there is some evidence that has been presented to a judge that the judge agrees is evidence of a crime and says you can have a warrant to go through Dom's stuff. That is the law, and that is the only law that I will agree with ever. That I don't agree with any concessions to that law. I don't like stop and frisk. I don't like civil asset forfeiture. I don't like no-knock raids. I don't like any of that. I believe that there needs to be evidence of a crime that is presented to a judge with a witness, and then the judge says, okay, you have a warrant to go into that person's effects. That's what I believe 100% of the time. I don't believe that, oh, I smelled marijuana is probable cause. I don't believe that your blinker being out is probable cause. I don't believe that you swerving into another lane is necessarily probable cause. I do believe that driving recklessly is probable cause, but I was pulled over one time. This is a true story. I was pulled over one time in Ohio because the cop said, I think you went across the middle line when you were coming around a turn. I was coming around a turn on a highway. It was like 55, 60 or whatever. Well, I thought you went across the line. And I said, well, do you have is there camera, like a camera? He's like, no, my camera's not working, but I thought you went across the line. So let me see your stuff. And I was like, that's bullshit. Now, if I was swerving into the other lane, sure, that's driving recklessly. Totally, especially if his camera was on, right? Because that is what's called evidence. So yeah, I completely disagree with the person I was arguing with and with Matt Iglesias. Go fuck yourself. Sure, you have real ID and you want to present your whatever I think you have to present your birth certificate or passport to get your real ID, I believe.
I went through the real ID like years ago. Because I had gotten my real ID after my divorce, I had to present 2 pieces of mail, my birth certificate, and it had to be the embossed original, and my marriage certificate and my divorce certificate.
Good God.
In order to get my real ID.
You know what I had to present? Almost none of that. Weird. What's the big difference between you and I that you would have to present so much more stuff than me to prove your identity? I don't know. I can't.
Owning a uterus?
Can't figure it out. I don't know. I'm not sure what it is. Must
because
have been
the name change. Like when you get married, your name changes. So
Weird.
I had to
Maya says she had to do the same thing. Well, you know what? All I had to present was my birth certificate. That's all I had to present.
And the mail. You had to do the 2 pieces of mail too, because
Maya,
everybody
maybe
does
you
that.
can help me. Maybe you can help me understand, Maya. Is there something about you and Kitty that's the same about me that's different? Let's all think about it for a second. Why would Myra and Kitty need to present so much more documentation? Oh, okay. Well, I misunderstood. It's fine. My point is that it's institutionalized misogyny. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
And it pisses me off.
It's so frustrating because, I had to do everything that somebody assigned male at birth had to do, plus I had to do extra steps.
I do.
Well, that's true. That's true.
That's a true fact.
The
Listen,
top of the privileged power.
And that's one of them. Porpoise says, I think I had to go to the DMV repeatedly for 6 months. Argue with the clerks, try to go around them, finally call my press contacts to get my driver's license gender market changed. It's just such bull. Gender. It's just so stupid that you have to go through all that for your gender. Like, it doesn't even. I mean, obviously, your gender identity matters. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying,
like if it's driver's license, like what it says on your driver's license, like grand scheme of things, it's not that your blood type is more important,
right? Like,
or whether you need corrective lenses, like that's more important to have.
Like,
on a
I've never been like, hi, how are you? Can I see your driver's license? I'm not sure about your genitals. Like, that's not. I've never. It was just I don't care.
And
I literally just don't care.
Exist.
Oh, okay, fine.
People exist where they may present one or the other, but like you wouldn't have a definitive like line. It's so frustrating, and the fact that I had to go through extra hoops to get my real ID that somebody with a penis did not have to do is frustrating. And the fact that I had to go out of my way and spend extra money and that's another thing. They want to try the whole Real ID thing. They are going to be restricting movement, like where you're not going to be able to go on a commercial flight in the United States if you don't have a Real ID. And if I didn't have the money to get those extra papers printed out, like to get my marriage certificate and my divorce certificate, if I didn't have them, I wouldn't have gotten the Real ID. And if I didn't have the money, or if I didn't have the transportation to get down to the courthouse to get those documents printed out and certified that they are authentic documents, then I wouldn't be able to get the ID. And then it means that I don't have the freedom to travel in the United States on a commercial flight once this goes into effect. It is discriminating against poor people.
Yes. And it also, Trump's push to make all these changes to elections would require you to have a Real ID to vote. And guess what? If you can't go through all these hoops and you can't find all these documentation and you can't get the money together to buy that documentation or pay for the documentation or anything, guess what you can't do?
Can't vote.
Guess who poor people overwhelmingly vote for?
Democrats.
Well, in marginalized areas, at least, yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of rural areas where unfortunately it's different. Yeah, Titan
But their
sent me,
impact
and
is
thank you.
usually less because like the like poor white people in like rural areas, there's not the same concentration of voter base, you know.
Right, because they don't. A lot of them just don't vote. Right. Jess Piper, who I'd love to have on, is a rural Democrat in Missouri who specialize. That's her whole thing. She goes and talks to rural Democrats. Like that's her entire career. I should see if I could get her on here. I'd love to talk to her. Yeah, but Titan sent me the story out of science.org. Titan, make sure you link it in the chat too. About them killing the National Institute of Health's effort centered on the health needs of women. The Women's Health Initiative has enrolled tens of thousands of participants in clinical trials of hormones and other medications and tracked the health of many thousands more over 3 decades. Its findings have had a major influence on healthcare. The leaders announced yesterday that contracts supporting its regional centers are being terminated in September, and that the study's clinical coordinating center based at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center will continue operations until January 2026, after which time its funding remains uncertain. There is no... Huh?
This ties back to what I said when we had Mowdy on 2 weeks ago. The fact that, you know, women are not properly accounted for in medicine. The fact that Ambien,
Right.
the sleep medication, it wasn't until it went to market that they found out that women needed less of a dosage for it because they were getting in car accidents the next morning over men, because there aren't, you know, a lot of women that these things are tried on, especially
Right.
not of reproductive age. There was, I can't remember the name of it. Titan will probably come in clutch on this, but there was a medication that it went to market, and it wasn't until after it got into the broader populace that they realized, oh, it causes massive birth defects in
yeah.
I can't remember the name of it off the top of
I
my
can't either.
head.
Oh, yeah. I want to say Lipitor. It's definitely not Lipitor. It's
No, but it was something that, like, they had tested it and it got FDA approval. Then when
thalidomide. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thalidomide. Yeah.
But then once it got out into the general populace, that's when they realized, oh, it's causing birth defects in babies.
Horrible, horrific, like weird mutant babies. I mean, it was awful.
Absolutely awful. And so, like, even in crash test dummies that they use for women are just smaller men. Like, they're the exact same dummy as the one used for men. They just made them a little bit smaller and a little bit lighter, but that's not, like, a woman's body is not the same as a man's body. Like, when a woman has a heart attack, different symptoms than
Yep.
when a man has a heart attack.
Yep.
And so the fact is, you know, women, people with uteruses, you know, people assigned female at birth, they are not accounted for properly in medicine. Like Kat Bohannon, like I brought up her book the last episode. Excellent book. Like I'm really enjoying reading it, and I'm gonna plug this again because
Eve, right?
Yes, Eve. How the female body drove 200 million years of human evolution. She actually gave an amazing talk at Free Flow that I was at, and she actually tied it into like the Aliens franchise. And when you had the one doctor who she was impregnated by the alien, and so she goes to one of the med pods to have an emergency cesarean section, and it's like, oh no, this was only calibrated for men, so we can't do that. So she had to do it herself, like the old fashioned way,
Oh,
and then
Jesus.
stay herself closed and continue on her day so that she didn't die to the chest burster. But she was like, so like this is how she tied it into the speech, where she's like, why would they send up these pods that are only calibrated for men when half the crew were women? And she's like,
Right.
but we're already doing that right now. We're testing medications on men, not on women. We
Yep.
are not actually, doing due diligence for these things. And it's just absolutely insane, that is still in this day and age happening. And now they want to, take it a step further and start actually targeting people. How long until we end up in Gilead, where it's like, if you were born, female, you start losing the right to a job? Like, they're already saying if you don't have real ID, you're not going to be able to go on a commercial flight if or vote. So you're going to be disenfranchising poor people, like men and women. But
Sure.
how far before they say, "Oh, well, if you don't have real ID, you can't have a job. You need real ID in order to have a job." And then expand that where it's like, "Oh, well, like we're gonna go back to like women not being in the workforce, and we want to take away women's rights to own property and have their own bank accounts." It wasn't until like the 70s that women were able to actually have a credit card in their own name and not their
Yeah.
husband's name,
And a bank account.
and a bank account.
Yeah.
Where that they could actually, they'd be paid, and be allowed to work overtime, or
Yeah.
not be discriminated against because, oh, well, you're of reproductive age and you just got married, you're probably going to have a kid, so we're just going to fire you, or we're not going to give you the job because you belong in the home as a mother.
My grandfather used to cover up his earnings when he signed the tax return and had my grandmother sign the tax return. He wouldn't show her earnings, or his earnings. And the only job that he would allow her to get was as a real estate agent. And she went and got her real estate license, and then became the number one Century 21 real estate agent in
Good for
her
her.
city or county. I forget which one. Yeah, my grandmother. I was like, "Oh,
Absolutely
hell
good
yeah,
for
man.
her. Like, boss
Absolutely,
babe.
absolutely." Um, a lot of hey, what we've got, we've got we've got like 8 or 12 of them in the chat right now that are all awesome. So you're in a great, you're in the right spot. Yeah, Michelle, or a mortgage. That's a good point too. Is it wasn't just credit cards and bank accounts.
If
It
you
was
go back
mortgages
even
too.
further, like, they couldn't even inherit property. Like,
Right.
women were property. Like,
Yeah.
that's the whole point of a dowry. It was you were basically paying the husband to take the property off of your hands.
Right. Right. And the other, big part of this is that that we really want to highlight is the spillover, right? Yes, it's an autism registry. Yes, that is the idea here. But more than just people with autism are going on it. Um, the idea is that they can track autism or figure out the cause of autism. We already fucking know we already know the cause of autism. It's genetic. That's the cause of autism, is that some people think differently than other people. It's all the mystery has been solved. Like,
I mean,
what
the
else is
whole
it that you want to that you want
the
to
whole
know?
reason they even have the chance to do this is because like the reports come out, and like there are a lot more people getting autism diagnoses this day than there were in the past.
Right.
And here's the thing.
There's a lot more
First of all,
planets being documented in this day and age than there were in
that
the
too.
past too.
But
But we don't see it as a
part
problem.
of it is we have a better understanding of the spectrum of autism, where people might fall on it. And, a lot of people might have not been diagnosed before. They would have just been a little bit quirky, a little bit like weird,
Right.
and not actually gotten a diagnosis. So there's that. There's more people. So that adds to it.
That too.
And
Yeah, the
like,
population has grown.
can we also, like, not forget that we still have lead, from the whole leaded gasoline that
Sure.
causes
And lead
changes, like,
pipes. There's still lead pipes out
there's
there
still
too.
lead pipes,
Yep.
like, Flint still doesn't have clean drinking water. So, I mean, sure, like there may be some environmental things at play, but I would be like more willing to believe it's lead, considering that has shown like definite changes to like, neurology like of people.
Lead
Um,
paint. Yeah. Michelle, lead
lead
paint
paint.
too. Yep.
So, I mean, it's not the vaccines. Like that's already
It's
been
definitely
proven. It's
not
not
vaccine.
that.
I want to state this absolutely equivocally. There is nothing wrong with vaccines. Vaccines are basically a modern medical miracle. Um,
Absolutely
Vaccines are safe. They are reliable. They are
effective.
trustworthy. I've gotten so many vaccines. When I moved to South Carolina in 2003, I had to get a measles booster because they said the measles booster that I got in the 80s, whenever it was, wasn't strong enough. So I had to get a measles booster. And I was like, oh, okay. It wasn't a problem, right? Like I went and did it. The whole idea that, yeah, porpoise, that's true. The lead levels have gone down, but once it builds up in your blood, it's there. It doesn't go around. Titan could be ruling the world. That's true. Kitty, give us your final thoughts before we get out of here.
Oof, there's a lot of them. The fact of the matter is, this is just one more step in a way that they are trying to consolidate power and essentially, break people up into smaller groups so that they can exert more control, because
Right.
divide and conquer is always a strategy.
Yep.
And if they can, find a way, like they're using autism right now as there's a huge spike in the amount of people with autism, so we should study this and figure it out, because nobody wants an autistic kid, which is disgusting, by the way.
Which is
uh
horrible.
like it's a horrible thing to say. And when RFK went off on these are kids that will never have gainful employment. They'll
Oh my god,
never
I
hold
didn't even want to bring
a
that.
job. They'll
That
never
pissed
use
me
a
off so
toilet
much.
by themselves. My child is fully fucking potty trained. Thank you very much. And he's better at
Callan,
building Lego than
is
me.
Callan still in the chat? We should ask Callan how often Callan uses the toilet. Like I didn't want to bring that up because that
He'll
got
never pay taxes.
I got so angry when I read that. Anyway,
I
I'm
wanted to
sorry.
break
Go on.
something. I wanted to break something. As again, I have a child on the spectrum.
Right.
And it just infuriates me that he would dehumanize my child so much. And, it is a spectrum. Yes, there are going to be kids on the spectrum that they will not ever pay taxes, or they will need severe like assistance for their lives, but that's
Sure.
not the norm.
No.
Like for every one of those, there's people that only need minor accommodations, and people that don't really need accommodations. They're able to kind of adapt and just make it work. Like there's tons of adults, like for fuck's sake, when I was a kid, my parents were told that I needed to be tested for ADHD. And they were like, not my child, so they didn't have me tested. So,
Oh, really?
now like as an adult, I have to go through that whole thing, which is I honestly, it just my brain shuts down whenever I have to think about what I would have to do to get the diagnosis.
Right.
But yeah, I'm the kind of person that I need caffeine to like focus. I can drop 400 milligrams of caffeine and go right to sleep. Like it helps like relax me and helps me focus. It doesn't actually
If
wake
I
me up.
dropped 400 milligrams of caffeine, I'd be awake for 3 months.
But anyways, I digress. Like the fact that they're dehumanizing and they're using autism, because most parents, they're scared and they don't know, because there is a lot of unknown and there are things you need to accommodate for if you end up having a child on the spectrum.
Right.
They might need therapies, they might need a little bit of extra accommodations,
Sure.
what have you. But the fact is, because they're utilizing that fear, they're like,
Right.
okay, well, we can use this as our wedge point. And once they get in the door, like if you
Right.
give fascists an inch, they will take a fucking 9 miles.
Sure.
So
Well, it's the same. Um, they're treating autism like it's severe cerebral palsy or muscular dystrophy. Like I have a colleague at work, a colleague at work that does what I do, that helps people with retirement, that has cerebral palsy. Her speech is a little bit slurred, her movements are a little bit jerky, but she's a successful salesperson. Like just having a disability doesn't remove you from public life. Yes, there are people that have very severe cerebral palsy. I used to volunteer at a place called the Wheelhouse in Central Florida. It still exists. I volunteered there as a kid. People that had muscular dystrophy and cerebral palsy. You had to be in a wheelchair. It had to be something that put you in a wheelchair. I used to volunteer there a lot. And there were people there that had jobs that they went to work every single day, and they had jobs like everyone else has a job. And there were people, are you showing off your sword?
Someone in the
And there were
chat
people
asked.
that were very severely disabled. And there were a few that I would like read to and stuff. They literally couldn't move. Like they had the one gentleman that I knew for many, many years, he died, unfortunately. But he was in a wheelchair. He had a large board in front of him with a bunch of letters and words. And it was a struggle for him to get his thumb to whatever word or letter he wanted to say, but he was still able to communicate, right? And there was work that he was able to do. He was able to do, I think he did accounting. I don't remember anymore. Now he did it part-time. He did it for a local charity where he just helped them out with some accounting stuff. He wasn't like the director of accounting or anything because he had a very severe disability. But even he was able to work and make some part-time money to go along with the disability that he got that, paid for his room and board. So the idea that you have a disability at all that means that you can't participate in public life is so offensive and so angering to me when I literally know people who have severe disabilities who are functional in normal life. And to just say that anyone with autism can't file taxes or use a toilet, like my veins are bulging away from my skin. Anyway.
No, some people asked about the sword hairpin
Yes.
that I have. It was actually a gift from, he was here in the side chat earlier, Ben, a friend of mine.
Yeah.
We went to MegaCon together. I was dressed as Dark Phoenix. He was dressed as Logan, and yeah, he got me my little hairpin for a gift from the convention.
Yes. And Kitty said that we were going to battle for autistic people tonight. So she was dressed for battle. We're going to finish with Brandon's comment because I really like it, and that'll be what we finish with. Brandon says, people with disabilities in general, in my opinion, are extremely dehumanized. Being disabled myself, I didn't get the socialization skills that most kids simply because I'm disabled. And Brandon, I've seen that. There was kids I knew that I went to school with that had disabilities that were treated extremely differently, and mocked, and you're on the short bus, and the helmet jokes and that sort of thing. And kids are going to be kids, and
kids are assholes.
Kids are assholes. It's not an excuse, but that's just how kids are. But it's still sad to me. And what we need to do is make sure that this push to dehumanize all autistic people, and it like we said, it'll spill over to other disabilities too, and even queerness and gayness and gender ideology and everything. Correct.
And depression,
anxiety, everything.
A Democrat, because woke mind virus.
The woke mind virus. That you just have empathy for other people is.
You're not a horrible human being, so you need to go to the camps.
Right. So that's why we're pushing so hard against autism, because we know where this eventually leads. And don't stop fighting, no matter what. Do not stop fighting, because I'm going to steal a line from somebody that I like. When we fight, we win. And we're going to win this one too.
Hopefully.
Thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Kitty, for being amazing. Love you guys. And we'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.
Yes.